So I had an idea of how I wanted to wrap up this interview, and you couldn't have teed it up better. I think the final quote from James Carr in that video that we just played was, "The sun shines for just a brief moment on this our time, and it's our job to represent all those who've come before us and all those who come after us, to be a good ancestor." I love that phrase, to be a good ancestor. And I don't know if you know this, but the reason we called the company ASENSEI was after the word sensei, which is a word that like literally translates to almost this idea of a living ancestor, someone who's further along a journey than others are. And it's all about, a sensei is responsible for reaching back and helping those in the same way that others reach back and help you, right? And it's a word I must have said tens of thousands of times as a kid doing judo and jiu-jitsu and karate, but now it's a word that kind of has real meaning. And so, here you are, like Eric Murray, an athlete coached by coaches who carried legacies and helped you create one of your own. And now with the sensei, you're the one reaching back. You're the coach. You've already had, just in the last 2 or 3 years with us, this incredible impact on the lives of tens of thousands of people who find their inspiration and practice from sitting down on an erg and training with you. So Eric Murray, the athlete, has become Eric Murray, the coach. Eric Murray, the student, has become Eric Murray, the teacher. And I just want to give you the last word on that.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept because I feel like in a way it's your responsibility, and like nobody tells you you should be doing this or this is how it should happen. But for some, like people say they're like, "I loved watching you. I wish I could have done what you do," and all this sort of stuff. And so then the more you talk to people about it, and the more people that ask you questions, you're like, well, you can either keep all of this inside you and keep it to yourself and be like, I'm not going to let anybody know about it. Or you can be like, hey, this is what we did. This is why we were successful. Like we found something, we found an equation, a recipe that worked for us. This, I'll explain it to you now, like we've talked about it here, and then is that going to make you, can you find something out of that that's going to make you better? Because at the end of the day, why wouldn't we want to help anyone else? As I say, I'm a pretty genuine person, happy-go-lucky, and if I can help people in their pursuit of being good or better at what they do, like so be it, and I've talked to a lot of people over my time as well to like find little bits of magic to be a better husband or a partner or a father, whatever. And that's the way that I've always looked at it. So yeah, especially with the rowing side of things, because I was very, very good at it. It's like if I can give somebody a little bit of help to make them better sooner, or not make the same mistakes that I did, then surely it leaves it in a better place. And that's with a lot of our sports teams, that legacy. It's like if you leave the jersey, especially with rugby,
I cut that part of the video out. I wish I'd left it.
Yeah, so there's a great quote there, like, I'm going to leave the jersey in a better place for the next person that comes in, for the next person that comes in. So you just get this ladder effect all the way through. And that was us. That was the same thing that we tried to do in our time, so that we left it in a better place for the next people, next generation coming through. And what else can you try and do? You can either like shut up shop and be like, I'm not going to let anyone know my secrets, or you can be like, well, what am I going to do with them? Like, I'm finished. I'm out of there. So you may as well share the knowledge and let everyone like do a really good job in their passion. And that was me.
I love it, and I can't think of a better place to leave this interview. That's what we're all trying to do.
We've got a few questions though, there, pal. There was a few questions.
We do. So I just wanted to wrap here by thanking you for making this. Has been a fantastic conversation to have with you. I hope everyone would agree. I'm seeing people nod, so I think they agree. But we do have some questions. So hopefully, are you okay hanging around for 5 minutes and taking some of these questions?
Yeah. No, but we had our coach was basically like, you can do things when they have to be done, right? It's like saying, well, I need to go and vacuum my floor. The longer you put it off, it's like then all of a sudden, shit, it's going to take you so much longer to do. And then because your life's already busy and there's so much going on, you just won't find the time, and then you'll do a half-assed job at it, right? And so basically he was like, if you miss a training day, you can never make it up again. You can't go and do, if you're doing 4 or 6 hours a day, If you miss a day because you're just like, I need a day off, or whatever, for whatever reason, that you just can't make it up. You know, if you procrastinate, and you're pissing about, you can't make it up. There's just not enough time, you know, or when you try and make it up, you're not going to do a very, very good job of it. And he was like, I know that it's not always going to be that situation, but the amount of, if you minimize the amount of time, of downtime, non-productive time, you're going to get a better result at the end of it. And that was basically the key. It was like, well, we've got to go to an event, you know, a sponsorship event or whatever, and we've got to be there at 10 o'clock. So instead of saying, well, let's take the morning off and we'll just train this afternoon, it's like, why can't we get up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, jump on the rowing machine for an hour or two, then drive up to Auckland and then do it there, you know? So there's like, it's adapting to when things need to be done. And he was like, I know that there's going to be situations where that doesn't happen, but he's like, if you start adding all of those up at the end of the year, how many hours were you willing to miss, but you didn't? And then at the end of it, could that have been the difference between things being successful or being prepared on time? And that was basically just, it was something for me. I was like, I've never really thought of it that way, because I was just like, that I just need to go and do that, but I didn't think about the training side. I was just like, well, I'll make that up tomorrow by doing an extra session during the middle of the day. And he's like, well, you can't. Like, there's physically, especially in sport, it's physically impossible to squeeze more time in because you just can't recover well enough. You can't give it the best opportunity. That's why you've got this training program set out by the people that are the experts. You know, it's like if you had to do 3 15-hour days, you can't tell me that last day is going to be very productive, because you're going to be so super like tired. Whereas you map it out to make sure that it's going to be in the best possible position. And that was just really like the situation that we tried to get to. And it seemed to work really, really well. I've always, especially in like a lot of the streams, like I always bring it up when we're warming down at the end. I always talk about active recovery, because of course people just like think they just need to stop and sit down and do nothing. And absolutely, everybody, a lot of the time it's completely different. And my personality was very much, don't just go home and sit down, you know, like do something, keep busy, to a point of just stimulation, because that keeps you sharp, it keeps you thinking. Whereas a lot of the time when you're just like parked up in front of the couch, you know, like you got to do it at some stage, right? But that's when you're completely switched off from everything. But being active does help stimulate the mind. And quite often I'd be just pottering around doing stuff, and then you start to think about what you're doing without obsession, but just enough that it keeps you stimulated. And I think that's probably the key word, is that stimulation. That you start to think about things that you'd like to try or do differently, or just even in general life. And we did have that same philosophy. Your coach must be from my generation, because we were work hard, play hard. You know, it's like, if you want to have fun, you know, make sure you're working hard and playing hard at the same time, rather than being like super work focus. You know, you've got to have that balance. And we had a very, very good balance to a point. I think my balance was a little bit shifted onto the play hard side. But yes, it is. I feel like there's got to be an amount of stimulation that happens, and I think that's probably the better word than sort of the activeness, because at the end of the day, if you're stimulated, there's things that you enjoy doing. Absolutely, that's exactly what we tried to do a lot of the time. In 2007. We were in a 4 going to the World Championships, and we ended up training in a place in Germany which had a beer festival on. And so here's Eric and Kiwi mates thinking, holy shit, we've got a beer festival on. We're basically like VIPs of the town. Anytime we step foot in that tent, there's beer steins getting delivered to you. And I'm like, you beauty. And of course, the number of nights we were out drinking, and we're like 3 weeks out from the World Championships. But we had an amazing time, and we knew that if we wanted to like play hard, we had to work hard on the water, and we ended up winning the World Championships. And I laugh about it, because I'm like, I did so much drinking, it was ridiculous, and there were some really, really big nights in there, but we never lost the focus of like, if this was starting to affect our rowing, this had to disappear. So we just found a balance which was making it so that this was still very, very good. without it starting to be detrimental to our performance. Our first coach was very, is a word I'm going to try, I'll try and get my vocabulary right, authoritarianism. Like he literally was like, he made all the calls, and it was, and we didn't enjoy that. And so a lot of the decisions were Hamish and I making the decision together and then taking it to the boss. And
I think we should just finish the interview here, Eric.
Yeah. But then when we got a new coach in, it was very much like sit down and collaborate, and then everybody would just bring all their bits to the table, and then we'd try and get an agreement. But if it came down to like a specific, like we couldn't all quite get to that point, he'd be like, guys, I love what you're talking about, but I still think we need to do this. And at the end of the day, the one thing that I always looked upon is we're all there, we're all doing our jobs specifically, and there's, at the end of the day, there's one person that's got an overriding, I guess, rationale about the thought, about what we're trying to do, and they have the ultimate decision because of so many other factors. For Hamish and I, it was budgets, or it was logistics, or it was like this. We're like, oh, we want to go do these regattas, and they're like, we don't have the cash, we can't do that, even though we think that it's going to be really, really beneficial for us to make those changes or to do that. They are the reason of why we probably either can or can't. But they still want to be part of that conversation. And we never would go in there and say, can we do this? And they'd be like, no. They'll be like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it rationally together as a group, and then we'll weigh up the pros and cons, and then we'll look at it in terms of this. And so it was a very collaborative conversation. And I think that was what you need. And that's what made us, like, especially in our second 4 years going into Rio, I had probably the best 4 years of my life, because we had freedom, we were training well, we were training specifically, we had time outside of it for family. You know, I had a young boy, Hamish got engaged to his wife, and they were going away a little bit and everything. And of course, it was just like, we had an amazing time, but we were still working, still producing results. And so getting that balance, whereas it used to be rowing here, the universe just revolved around the rowing, and then all the other shit just got dumped. And, you know, you always heard and it's a real cliche, you know, everyone's like, oh, I sacrificed this and I sacrificed that to do what I'm doing in my sport. And we were like, nah, there's an opportunity cost, but we never had to sacrifice anything. We were like, we still get to do all the cool things that we wanted to, but we just had that collaborative environment with what we had. And I think that's the key, is making sure everybody's got a voice, everybody brings something to the table in whatever way they think. And that was the way that our coach did it, especially in the second cycle. First cycle, no way, and it was terrible. It was horrible. That's why, like, when we finished up with him, we're like, catch you later, pal. We're not doing that again, because it's ridiculous. So yeah, the coach plays a big role in making sure that if you've got a good leader, pretty sure Stephen's not bad. You know, you basically do have a really, really good opportunity for everybody to be part. Right? Rather than being like, I'm the boss, shut up, do what you're told. You're like, we're all part of this. And that's what we started really feeling in that second cycle going into our second gold medal. And you walk away from it going, that was like the best part. I try and block out a lot of that first cycle because it was just a little bit terrible. Oh yeah, it's actually I spoke to some people about this the other day. Both Hamish and I were really like, when we won, we were like, I love the process of getting to that victory. You know, it wasn't like we have to do this process to get the victory. We really enjoyed like going through and doing all the bits along the way, and refining them and being better, and looking at it going, you know, surely we could try this a little bit differently, or whatever. But when you look at it, you can stand up on the dais and you've got this tangible result, like reward, which is a gold medal. But we're like, I'm more proud of looking back at the 40,000 kilometers than I am of going, oh, that one race that we did that won it. Because you look at it and you go, if we didn't do this, we wouldn't have this. And so you can look back on it and go, I was super proud we didn't, you know, remember that day where we were going to call it quits because it was real shit water, and we carried on. You know, that day that I was like, turned up to training and could hardly walk, you know, and I went, you know what, maybe we'll just get a little bit out of it. And so it is the process, right? And you've got to, the process isn't super enjoyable a lot of the times, you know, it's very stressful, and it's navigating through that and learning and getting that experience, you know, and knowing that, hey, look, you know, there's always projects in life. It's not like, you know, dare I say it, you're going to be here forever. You know, you might get poached and go somewhere else and whatever. But that's the thing, right? Is that you learn from each experience and you take that on and you become a better person in yourself. And that's what we try to do, is every time, if you can be a better person today than you were yesterday, and enjoy that process to know, man, I did a very, very good job at that. And also know when you didn't do a very good job, you know, because things didn't go according to plan. But definitely for me, I was really look back on what I did to get to those gold medals, rather than thinking, hey, look, here's my gold medal, look how good I am. I'm like, yeah, I loved the grind. I loved pushing myself. I loved making those mistakes and learning not what to do, which really like builds confidence in yourself, you know, for your future self, and go, well, you know, yeah, I've done this before. I've been in this situation. Let's carry this on. Let's try something different. And I do think that that's something that everybody needs to look at, especially, is going, the process should be more fulfilling than the actual outcome itself, you know. And if you can look at that and say, yeah, did a fantastic job all the way through that, I think that's where you should get your enjoyment.
So, you know, Eric, Bill and I have spent far too much time actually in dingy old school halls or gymnasiums for weekends at karate seminars where some, you know, allegedly great instructor has flown in for a weekend, and we stand there for most of the weekend like, oh, what are we doing here? This is just rubbish. And then there was always a moment in the weekend where you're like, wait a minute, what did he just do there? How did he do that? And we have an expression that we still share kind of 20 plus years on of, that was my £25. That was the money I spent on the seminar. It was all for that 30 seconds of learning I just got there. And so today, your answer to Blake's last question, that was my £25. Because this is hard. Like building a startup company is a grind, you know, the process is hard. And you're always focused on like, will you IPO or will you be bought by Google, and the likelihood of that is much less than will you enjoy the journey that you're on and the people you're on that journey with and the team that's behind you. So that's what I'm going to take away from today. So I appreciate the question, Blake, and appreciate the answer. Eric, thanks so much for your time. You've set the bar super high. So this might just be the last ever ASENSEI Speaker Series, so we can kind of finish on a highlight. But thanks so much for your time. We've had the opportunity to sunrise in New Zealand as well, so I will let you get your morning.
Yeah, look, I can get, my sun's coming in. Oh, beautiful.
It's looking good.